Everybody, it's great to be back here getting towards Friday, Parashat Vayeshev. And we all know that when a person does something, we want to do it right. We want to do it with the proper intention. And we don't want to have personal gain from it. And that's the highest level. That's the best way of doing something. You do something for the sake of doing the right thing and only to do good. And that's a very high level in a human being, because we all know that a person could do so many things and that they end up being good, but they can have a lot of personal gain on the side. But when something is totally clean and no other outside interests were involved, that is the highest level. And our sages talk about this in many, many ways, in many forms and shapes, this concept. In this week's portion, it's very, very powerful lesson, and I want to show you from one particular incident how we learn about this. But beforehand, I would like to mention a great piece of Talmud to you all, from the tractate of Nazir. Nazir means a Nazarite. And there's a whole tractate that deals with Nazarites. And in that tractate, the Talmud brings down a very interesting teaching. And it brings two particular biblical, and introduces two particular biblical personalities. And one of them is named Tamar, in our portion, the daughter-in-law of Yehuda of Judah. And it says that she committed some act of harlotry, the Talmud defines it, but nevertheless, she merited in kings and prophets coming out of her. In other words, she was the mother, one of the great mothers of Messiah, of King David, from the seed of later Messiah comes out of. And on the other hand, Zimri, from the tribe of Shimon, he also committed a harlot kind of act, what he did, sinning, sexual perversion and sinning, and he caused a terrible tragedy, where tens of thousands were killed in a plague. So the Talmud said, what was the difference between the two characters? Why did Tamar merit in what she merited? On the other hand, Shimon caused a terrible tragedy from the tribe of Shimon, Zimri. And the Talmud answers is that Gedola Avera Lishma. They learn from this a very important concept that when someone does a sin, but it means totally selflessness in the act of that sin, for no personal enjoyment, no personal interest involved, but only for the sake of something good, to bring good to the world, that is greater than doing a mitzvah when someone does it with the wrong intention. And the Talmud goes on to question this and then gets to a result, at least it's equal to doing a mitzvah with the wrong intention. So that's the level. So it's a very, very interesting teaching. And the Talmud gives an example about a very, very another famous biblical personality named Yael. Yael, as we all know, was the wife of Hev, mentioned in the book of Judges. And when the war on the northern front was going on, and Dvorah, the prophetess, tells Barak ben Avinoam, I want you to go to Hal Tavor, the Mount of Tavor, and I want you to draw, and we're talking about Sisera, the enemies of Yavin Melech Chatzor. He was the king of Chatzor, and Sisera was the general. And I want you to go and battle against, these enemies of Israel. And Yael does a great, valiant, brave act when she draws into her tent the general Sisera, and she literally brings him to the tent. She convinces him that she will take care of him, and our Talmud relates to us that she actually committed a sexual act with him in order to save Israel, because he was a very powerful general, and he could have, of course, done terrible damage. And she actually, in order to kill this person, she had to weaken him first, and then she kills him. And the Talmud says she is blessed greater, right? It says she's blessed greater than the mothers of Israel, of Leah, Rachel and Leah. Why Rachel and Leah? If we look, and Rashi brings a beautiful explanation over there, is that when Rachel and Leah, when they had, and also Sarah, when they gave the midwives, I'm saying the maidservants, not the midwives, the maidservants, when they gave the maidservants to their spouses to have children, they did it out of jealousy, right? For reasons not reasons that were totally clean. For example, Sarah wanted to have a child, and so she gives it to Hagar, and because she wanted to have some kind of child, and she was obviously came out of reasons where it wasn't totally clean. At the same way, Rachel and Leah, when Leah wasn't able to start having children, she gave to Jacob her maidservant. The same thing, Rachel. In the beginning, she gives the maidservant to Jacob, and part of the tribes are born from those relationships. And they did this because of the jealousy between the two sisters, and it wasn't done 100% for the right reasons, right? As opposed to Yael in the tent, she did everything. What her whole thing was just to save Israel. She, God forbid, was not looking to have a harlotry relationship with this murderer, Sisera, but she did it in order to overtake him and kill him, which she did. She was able to eliminate him, as we say today, neutralize, right? So this whole story, is a fascinating teaching. We see that even when something is done, in order to accomplish it, the things that were in kosher had to be done, but if it was done with the proper intention, it's a very high level. And from this, I want to take us to our portion 100%. We were just there with Tamar, but go a little further into the portion. I want to read to you, some of the verses and try to understand, this concept more from the portion. And we see in the opening of the portion, well, not in the opening, but this section that deals with Tamar and Judah. So we read about how Judah goes down and whatever it is, and he gets married and he has 3 children. And his children, one is called his firstborn is called and the second one is called Onan, and the third one is Shelah. And the Torah describes how that they died because they were, they did something wrong. And the Torah doesn't reveal to us what they exactly did. But let's read a little bit about that. I want to read the verse. If we look in verse number 7 in chapter 38, which we're reading here. So it says, Vayi b'chol Yehuda ra b'nei Hashem. The firstborn of Judah, was evil in the eyes of God, and God kills him. Right? So he died whatever he died of. So, Vayomi Yehuda, so what does Judah do? He tells his other son, Leonan, to go to his brother's wife, which was Tamar, which was given, it was when he first set up his firstborn heir to Tamar. So he tells Onan to go do something called Yibum. Yibum is a levirate marriage. If the brother dies before having children, so then the brother's wife marries the other brother. And that's what he did. And here, as rabbis, as a matter of fact, they say that Judah was the one who established the concept of the levirate marriage. He was the first one to begin this law in order to maintain the seed of the brother. And whatever it is, we know that Onan did not fulfill this properly, and he spilled his seed instead of doing the commandment of maintaining seed for his brother. And then he also, it's also evil in God's eyes, and God kills him. And then the third child, which was Shelah, Judah promises that he's going to give, when he gets older, to Tamar. And then he's going to maintain, the seed of the brother, the first brother that was killed, right? The first brother that was killed in his sin. And what's fascinating, Rashi brings it down. He explains what was the sin. What was the sin of the 2 sons of Judah, which is very unusual. And a family of such great giants of Torah, from these biblical giants, to see in the seed of Jacob. We know when there was no longer Esav or no longer Ishmael, but it was pure the seed of Israel, of Jacob, who's called Israel, and every one of the 12 tribes were on that very high level. So it's hard to understand what happened over here, that there are 2 sons that were in kosher, that behaved not in the proper way. And it's explained by some of the commentaries. The Ramban explains is that, and Rashi explains, the sin was that they were looking for beauty. They weren't looking for, to have children. And it turns out they were very young. I'm not going to go now into all the details, the age, but it turns out they were very, very young. And therefore, they weren't mature enough, really, to think about why would we get married, for what purposes we get married, to really have children, to build families. But again, it was for personal need. Going back to what we said a moment ago, we opened up the lesson, things that are done for not the proper intention. And of course, we hear that when the Bible is talking about the level it's talking on, we can't compare it, Of course, today, why people having wrong intentions of getting married were punished, when they were so young to get punished, because they were on a totally another wavelength, another level. So we can't make that comparison. I mean, let me just put that, I'll just say that as we say in Hebrew, mamamuz gal, as a side comment, because someone may ask, why were they punished, at a young age? Usually the Torah doesn't punish anyone until the age of 20. And, beforehand, no one's, even when a person becomes bar mitzvah, and for a man 13, for a woman 12, they still have, some years that God gives them to mature before they actually are held accountable 100% for their sins or punished for their sins. So these things are very deep, and I'm not going into that now. It's another topic. But whatever it was they sinned, we see by the fact that God, God punishes them. And the reason they were sinned, the sin itself was a lack of proper intention. They didn't marry for the wanting to build a family. It was all out of personal, more of personal lust and personal. They didn't want her to get a fat belly from pregnancy. Wanted to keep her thin. That's exactly what Rashi explains in the Ramban, and that's really what came out of this. So Tamar. So what happened to the third son? So the third son, Shelah, was supposed to be given to Tamar when he got older. But here, Judah didn't want him to marry Tamar right away. Why? Because he was concerned that he wasn't mature enough. The same thing that happened to the first two brothers is going to happen to him. Because he hasn't reached that level of spiritual maturity to be able to push aside your personal interests and do something much more in a higher level, a much higher state of level of spirituality. So he was pushing off the wedding. He said, let's wait before not exactly the wedding, the Levirate marriage we called, right? So that was pushed off. And therefore, this caused that whole issue that where Tamar was now, by the way, I can mention the early explanations here. Rashi explained something interesting, was that Judah was afraid. He wasn't planning on marrying and giving Shelah to marry Tamar because two of the first husbands died. And that's another thing. He was afraid that it would happen to the third son, even if he wouldn't sin. Well, there's a couple, whatever it is. But the Ramban, we're going to go in that direction because Rashi could really understand the same way. Why didn't he really want to let him marry? Because apparently he was afraid that, that it wouldn't be a proper match again. The same thing would happen again because they wouldn't have the proper intention. But I love the Ramban's explanation of adding that when he gets older, he'll be ready for it, much more mature for, to get married and do things in the proper way. But whatever it was, it didn't happen. And then she basically takes off her garments that she was wearing as someone mourning, waiting to marry in the family, waiting for the Levirate to take place, that marriage. And we all know Judah comes along the way, and he mistakes her for someone else. He doesn't know who this is. He thought she was a harlot, whatever it was, and he has relations with her, and then he takes collateral because he offered to pay her a gedi, a goat, and whatever it was he gave some, we call him mashkon, he gave a collateral until he'll pay her back, and then he's looking to find her and he can't find her. And whatever, is not going to go in the whole story now, and he finds out, of course, later that she's pregnant, and then he wanted to punish her as committing a harlotry sin, and then she takes out the collateral, what he gave her, and then he wakes up, well, wait a second, and she's righteous, she's more righteous than I am. And as the words brought down in verse number 26, Vayakeh Yehuda recognizes, and he says, my goodness, she's more righteous than I am, and therefore, because I didn't give it to my son Shelah, and whatever it was, and then she had twins, and we all know she was blessed in that great blessing. And here I want to read the beautiful words of this Sfono regarding when Judah's words when saying she's more righteous than I am. And here, this can really lead us to the cherry on the cake, to wrap things up over here in this concept. And if we look, and I want to quickly find the words of this Sfono, I'd rather read his words from the inside. And he says like this, Af al pi shehi ba ilai b'mirma. What does it mean when Judah says, she's more righteous than I am? Judah says, even though she came to me in disguise, right? She had a whole plan. She saw that she wasn't given the Shelah, and she wanted so badly to have a child, to continue the name of her first husband. Vani lo itia klal ki shalachti agedi. And he didn't see her because he said the Gedi and he didn't find whatever it was. Mekol makom hi tzadka b'mimata. But Judah says she was right in her disguising and everything she did. Why? And now here's the key word. He says shaita letachlit tov, because her purpose was for a good purpose. She meant to do the right thing. She wanted to do the right thing before God. What was that? Kiyum hazera, to maintain the name of her first husband, Lola natatzma, but not for personal enjoyment. How do we know this? She immediately got back into her mourning situation. Still, really, all she wanted to do was just to have a child and to maintain the name of And therefore, he goes on to say, she immediately went back to her state of mourning like she was beforehand. And he says, and she was much more righteous with more than I. When I meant with my righteousness, b'kiyum emunati shaita kavana bo lechvodi ulasig elvoni. What was he saying? What basically Yehuda wanted to do? Judah was interested, and he wanted to pay, the money that he offered her in the beginning, the Gedi, which was the young goat. Why? Because he wanted to get back what he gave his Erovon. When he gave in the beginning, when it says he gave his patil, when he gave the chotemet and the patil, chotemet is like a thing that he signs, whatever was the garment, whatever he gave her as a collateral in the beginning, he wanted to get his items back. And therefore, the fact that he wanted to get back his items, his intention was, he wasn't so much, he can say in his words, it wasn't so much that he was interested, in paying her back more than he wanted to get back what was coming to him, right? So that was one interesting side of the picture. But it was, so he had a personal interest. Let me pay and I'll get back what's coming to me. And therefore he says, Shu tachlit nifsad vigur, and that is a very, very a low purpose, a low reasoning. In other words, it's not a high level intention over here. As our rabbis say, Gidola ve'al lishma, and he quotes that Talmud I opened up with, that we see that a sin, but for the proper reasons, is greater than doing a mitzvah of not doing it, for the proper reasons. So, from this concept of Judah, what do we see? We see something extremely important. Is that Judah, of course, his intentions. I mean, what did he want to do? He wanted to pay her back, and get his items back. But his whole mindset was something very mundane. Just give me my thing, give me back my whatever I gave you, my chotemet ufti, and makel, whatever his staff was, whatever it was. But his whole mindset was, just give it back to me. I want my things. You'll get your thing. But nothing real high level spirituality here. No real tikkunim, rectifications, that we're trying to rectify the world and setting up the olam b'malchut shaddai, establishing the world with the throne of heaven. That wasn't his intention here. But when Tamar's whole intention was only to do good, only to continue the bringing life in the world, and nothing else mattered for her, and that's all she wanted to do, and she was a greater, and even here, she was so blessed. This is the highest level possible, and therefore she was blessed with the greatest thing of all. She had her twins, and from Peretz came out, the seed of King David, of Messiah. Fascinating. And this teaching, this lesson, we have to bring home in our lives and adopt it very powerfully, is that everything we do in this world, when we go and we want to do something in this world, the highest level we can possibly go for is to try to do something with no personal gain. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. And that's the highest level. If we can work on this and we can achieve this, and as many things that we do in our lives, there are so many things we do daily, but slowly but surely to try to everything we do, let's try to do it for the most important reasons with no strings attached to it. This will bring us to a high level. And it says, Nashim, they'll be greater than the tents of the matriarchs. Fascinating. And that's the level that will bring about the final rectification of establishing the kingdom of God in the land of Messiah, which came out of that. We see how this is literally the final tikkun. And which is so fascinating is the whole concept of yibum, which Judah is teaching. Right? What does yibum mean? A live-right marriage is to show that you have no personal interest, that your only interest is in one thing, to maintain the seed of that brother that passed away without a child. That's the lesson that Judah, he wanted it to happen for his son. He had that, and Tamar, she was the one who really taught the lesson. He sort of did it externally. That's the law. That's the law. Whatever, he might have inherited that apparently from his forefathers, from Abraham. But what he wanted to, so he wanted to maintain that. But the one who really taught them the lesson, the one who taught them what that really means, as we say in Hebrew, the falo asimon, when the what's the word? When the token falls and you understand now, wow, it just hit like an epiphany, it hits you. It was his daughter-in-law that taught him that lesson. His daughter-in-law taught him that lesson because she really did this naturally in the most purest way. And here is the great lesson that even through sin at the end, because in reality we have to analyze what was the sin over here. It was before the Torah was given, because we know that the Noachis, before the Torah was given, there wasn't a prohibition of a father-in-law marrying a daughter-in-law, after the son passed away. There's no real prohibition that way, to a Noachid, you could say, before the Torah was given. So really the issue was here more of esteem that Judah, the different explanations, there's a lot of discussion regarding what was the sin. So the Nachmanides says there was no sin really in that way. But the reason it was because Judah decided on his own as being, he was like the king. He was like the highest level there on leadership, and decided that this was a breach in the honor, of the family, where she was supposed to marry, the son Shelah. So he looked at it as giving a special ruling that she's deserving of being punished. He wanted to actually put her to punishing through burning, which, because people say, is that she was the daughter of a priest. Who was it? Melchizedek. Interesting. So, but whatever it was, so it's not even clear exactly what sin it was or whatever it was, but it wasn't something obviously in the line of kosher, 100%, for sure not. But here, the lesson is that when someone does something for the right reasons, sometimes everything else on the side falls off, because all they want to do is continue the line, of the children. She had a great intention. But of course, we can't take this into practical reasons. Here's the biblical times and special teaching at a one-time thing that happened. But obviously not to be instructed that way. Someone should do a sin to do something good. No, obviously not. We're not saying that off of it. But here it happened. Out of this came the great blessing because of her intentions was so pure in her heart. She had no other strings attached. So anyway, with that message, let's take it to our hearts and let's do things with pure intentions, and we will bring about redemption, the establishment of the final temple and the kingdom of God here in the land. Shabbat shalom, b'sorot tovot, yeshuot v'nechamot.